service. From Luke chapter 5, verses 12 through 16. Once when he was in one of the cities, there was a man covered in leprosy. When he saw Jesus, he bowed with his face to the ground and begged him, "Lord, if you choose, you can make me clean." Then Jesus stretched out his hand, touched him, and said, "I do choose. Be made clean." Immediately the leprosy left him, and he ordered him to tell no one. "Go," he said, "and show yourself to the priest, and as Moses commanded, make an offering for your cleansing, for a testimony to them." But now more than ever, the word about Jesus spread abroad. Many crowds would gather to hear him and to be cured of their diseases. But he would withdraw to deserted places and pray. And Luke chapter 8, verses 43b through 48. As he went, the crowds pressed in on him. Now there was a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years, and though she had spent all she had on physicians, no one could cure her. She came up behind him and touched the fringe of his clothes, and immediately her hemorrhage stopped. Then Jesus asked, "Who touched me?" When all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the crowds surround you and press in on you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me, for I noticed that power had gone out from me." When the woman saw that she could not remain hidden, she came trembling and falling down before him. She declared in the presence of all the people why she had touched him and how she had been immediately healed. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace." Please pray with me. Holy One, you have come to communities of people who desire to know you better. Sometimes we have done this well, and sometimes we have done terribly at this. We are grateful for you because your healing brings us back into your presence. We give thanks that you continually draw us to you and that your steadfast love lasts forever. In our generosity, we reflect yours. Show us that lives lived in love are full and whole lives connected to you. It is in you that we find healing when we are able to ask, and even when we feel insecure about what we need and want. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. I think all of us have stories or understandings that we could talk about that expresses who it is that we are inside and who it is that we are when we are with particular people, because we tend to be a little bit different, depending on who we are, with others than we might be when we're alone with ourselves and the thoughts that we have. The way that we are might depend on the group that we're with at a certain time. Who I am with Carl and the ways that I tell him about my day are different than I am with one of you, and different from when I talk to my sister, usually. My conversation with one or two people is different than if I am in a crowd of people. I tend to be quiet in a group unless my job calls on me to speak up or lead, like sometimes it does. My anger, if I have any, tends to be internal, and I rarely lash out. If I take a personality test like some that are online, I tend to test out as some kind of helper or an empathetic listener. If you ever take a personality test, if you've ever done that for a professional reason or for just a fun reason, you have to realize that there really aren't any right or wrong answers. Now, you may have an outcome that you prefer, but it just simply gives you an idea of who you are about yourself. It's not better to be extroverted than introverted or the other way around. And in one test where you can get assigned an animal depending on your answers, it's not better or worse to be a weasel, a walrus, or an owl, although it might feel a little less complimentary to be assigned the walrus like I was. In a personality test, it can help you understand yourself and how you respond to particular situations, how you connect with others maybe, and how you can understand them as well. But one isn't more right or wrong than others. They simply show us what our differences are usually and how we might work together more effectively, and some of them are just silly and fun. Probably the most important thing about them, if they do have a serious component other than getting to know yourself and others, is that they show you how it is that you might react or respond differently to different situations. Some people who need help might be perfectly happy asking for the help that they need, while others might be ashamed of asking for help. And so some people who get asked for help, if they're in a helping place, might immediately jump in with a helping hand, and others might be a little more reluctant or suspicious. So it can help us kind of look at ourselves and look at others in those situations and ask, if I do need help, why do I not ask for it? In all of those situations, personality types might differ in their response, and past experiences also affect how we ask or offer what it is that we have or what it is that we need. In the two stories from Luke's gospel that I read this morning, we were reminded of some of those things. We have the man with leprosy in the first part who throws himself at Jesus' feet. And we have the woman in the second part who sneaks up on Jesus and just touches his clothes. We'll also get kind of an insight into Jesus' personality a little bit. We might even realize in these stories how it is that Jesus expresses that humanity that we sometimes lose track of. We can see the reality of his humanity through the ways that he responds to the people around him and what he does when he feels overwhelmed. Even when we think we know everything about Jesus, though I don't know how we do that a whole lot, but we can be remedied and we can be reminded that he was a unique individual like each one of us who moved through the world in his own way with his own understanding. The first text describes a time when Jesus was in a city. When he was there, he cured a man with leprosy and told him to go to the priest so that he could be recognized as clean and re-enter the community. Sort of get a seal of approval so that he could reconnect with friends and family and not separate himself from others. After that, the text says, many crowds would gather to hear him and ask for healing and curing, but when he needed to, he would retreat to quiet places for prayer. As an introvert myself, this sounds like what I would do if I have a time where I have to interact with people for a while. I need to go to a quiet place for a while and recharge myself, and I call it switching gears. It can take time for an introvert to switch gears and gather up energy to face the next group of people, especially groups of new people. And even more importantly, if they need something from you. Jesus was constantly in demand, what it says in this text, after healing the man from leprosy. But Jesus didn't ignore the people who needed him. He just couldn't be with them all the time. Like many of us, probably all of us, he needed time to be in the spirit and to rest in body and mind. Even those of us who usually gain energy being with groups of people occasionally need time of separation to rest, but especially if people do need a lot from you. Parents with small children are some of those folks who probably need some moments alone at times, even if they're people who get energy from being around people. Jesus, in this text, both responds to crowds with compassion and to his own needs with compassion, love for himself. And the people he meets come with their own sets of needs and wants. The man with leprosy called out to Jesus, asking for his help very loudly, it seems. Maybe for him it was a matter of survival, or maybe he was a person who felt more comfortable asking for what he needed. He confidently says, If you choose, you can make me clean. And then he left the choice in Jesus' hands, seemingly knowing that Jesus was capable of doing this thing that he wanted if he wanted to. And Jesus did it in this situation, responded quickly and decisively, telling him to go to a priest, as I said, so he could reconnect with people around him and not have to be separate anymore. But the woman who sought Jesus' healing came differently. Maybe it was a difference in gender expectations of the day. That's very possible. Or maybe a personality difference. Both had been separated from their communities because of their physical disease or condition. But it seems like the woman wanted to keep her desire to be healed quiet. She came quietly close to Jesus in the midst of this crowd, hoping to reach out and receive the wholeness she needed. And it worked, though Jesus noticed. So one of them cried out with his need, maybe hoping his public request would mean a greater chance of success. The other one doesn't ask, just hopes that Jesus' power would be enough from the briefest of contacts. And I don't think either is wrong in the way that they approach Jesus. It's just different. Both were embodied, and both of their bodies were unhealthy in some way. His disease was on the surface and public. Hers might have been unknown, except to those who knew her well. Both used their bodies in a quest to be healed. He bowed to the ground. She stretched out her hand. And both were grateful to receive the wholeness and healing that Jesus gave them. The first gave Jesus a choice, if you choose. The second wanted what he had to offer. And only afterward, possibly after she understood she could trust it, she gave him her story. They had a brief, almost physical connection. She actually just touched his robe, I believe. And then she offered the connection of her story once he felt that power, that connection. One of the reasons that Jesus' humanity is so important to the Christian faith, that he isn't just looks human, like some have thought through Christian history. One of the reasons Jesus' humanity, his real humanity, is so important is that it is in his body that he felt how we feel, how we want connection, how we need food, how we need maybe time of not being with people, how we need the protection of clothing and shelter, and how we need to rest. We understand that Jesus is like us that way. It is in his experiences of those encounters, those stories that we hear, that we know his compassion. And it is in the different ways that he responds to the needs around him that we know his understanding of our needs and wants. In Jesus, we can know that while he loved his family, we also read some of the stories about that, knowing that he had differences from them, that they didn't always understand what it was that he was doing. He had differences like we have from our families, particular members. Not always agreeing and not always getting along. We can know in Jesus' stories that sometimes it is families of choice or close friends that can know us best and understand us well. Jesus spoke of the ways that his family didn't always understand, and how other people who were already living the life that he saw was necessary were already members of the kingdom of God. Jesus made deep connections with those around him, sometimes because they clearly made him aware of their need, like the man with leprosy and others, and sometimes because people were clearly aware of what they needed. And sometimes Jesus' deep connection, like that with the disciples, was because he was aware of the great need for change in the larger community, and aware that it would take partnerships and connections and time beyond what he understood he would have to bring those changes, to not even the rest of the world, just to the rest of the community around. We can connect deeply to Jesus and the particular strengths that give us, according to who we are, how we live, and what our experiences are. We can share what it is that he had with us, with others. We can help to heal, to make life whole, to share what it is that we have as gifts, particularly what we have been made and what life has made of us. We can, like Jesus, rest when we need it, connect with people when we need that, and share the gifts and the hope that we have received on a daily basis. We can be the unique people that God has made us to be, and be faithful and hopeful and grateful each day. We don't have to look like everybody else who's doing it. We can be ourselves and be faithful. We can help others. We can care for ourselves and those we love as we work together and each in our own ways to serve Jesus. To the glory of our living, loving God this day and always. Amen.